is so, fellas, and my hard R fellas that have joined the channel, Piers Morgan hosted a debate between libertarian comic Dave Smith and CEO of the conservative Christian satire account The Babylon Bee. They discussed Tucker Carlson's interview with Nick Fuentes. Seth Dillon sounds like a dripping slit and a leftist by crying about, and I'm not kidding, the bigotry of Nick Fuentes.
You're bigoted.
Now, I don't know what your timeline has looked like recently, but there appears to be quite a split on the political right in the United States. We have right-wingers, and instead of MAGA, Make America Great Again, we seem to have MEGA, Make Israel Great Again. I'm pretty sure Chris Rock did a bit about this.
It's like a civil war going on with
Right-wingers.
and there's two sides.
Right-wingers?
There's
MEGAs. So I made a video 5 months ago that you can view here about what I thought was a leftist behavior. Well, with this civil war on the right happening, it turns out it's not leftist. What existed before the left? Do you think we've really had 2,500 years of the left? Allow me to demonstrate the perfect parallel behavior between Seth Dillon and leftists engaging in debate. So, I think it's very accurate and appropriate to refer to the left as politically borderline. Now, some of you may know what borderline is, some of you may not, but that doesn't really matter. Let's get into it.
Now, when someone has borderline personality disorder, they tend to see people as all good or all bad, meaning that someone who is good can't make a mistake, and someone who is bad cannot be kind or thoughtful.
That's okay with you, not legally, I'm talking about like as an event that occurred in the country, you're like, oh, it's good that that happened. Do you think it's good for America? You think it's good to have a country where that's the understanding?
All right. So you're saying that...
This is what I'm trying to drill down to. Do you think it's good... You think it's good
yes.
to have a country where things like that happen? You think
Yes, George Carlin went to jail for swearing.
And that was good, you think?
No,
because
it wasn't.
And you think it's good that Rumeysa Öztürk is being forced to leave the country? You said it's good that they did it.
Marginally good?
Yeah, okay, great. So you're stumping for it.
So
you're on your platform saying it's good.
Marginally
That's my
point.
point. Yeah.
But I think the important distinction.
Relationships are seen kind of in a black or white or all or nothing.
Yeah, sure. It's fucking bullshit. It sucks. It's bad. It's bad for the country. I think that's bad. I think it makes the country smaller. Yeah, that's bad. It's
and
bad
like,
that they were murdered.
South Park tried just showing Muhammad, and Comedy Central wouldn't let him do it.
Yeah, that's bad.
So let's,
I think Kent State was bad.
My point is,
I think it was bad.
They censored the whole thing.
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah, that's bad, and I think that's contrary to American values.
Yeah, and that's bad.
So it can be pretty difficult to debate with a leftist where things are all good or they're all bad. Now let's hear what it sounds like to debate Seth Dillon.
And the question is whether or not that's a good thing. You know, I would argue that it's a bad thing. Gatekeeping is a good thing. I think it's what keeps movements healthy. It's you keep the rot out, you keep the bad ideas at bay. And to act like that's a good thing, no, it's actually a really bad thing. I think that it would have been a responsible thing and a good thing for the conservative movement if someone as prominent, I think that would be a good thing for everybody. What we're talking about is that we all have our own view of what the bad ideas are. We all have the freedom to engage in a discussion about that. That's what the free marketplace of ideas is. It's where the good and the bad clash.
That's nice, Seth Dillon. All right, fellas, ready to collect a fake right-winger scalp? Let's go.
The establishment, the corporate media, and the government have been caught lying about every major crisis of the 21st century. And you just can't, there's only so many you can go through. And we can all in our minds are rattling them off right now. If you go to WMDs or you go to, COVID, I mean, my God, they locked the entire country down. Joe Biden wasn't senile. And so, the thing that's interesting is that there are actually tons of conspiracy theories that just don't get called that. What was Russiagate, Pierce? Was that not a conspiracy theory? What was the idea that Iraq, Iran, and North Korea were all involved in 9/11? The only thing those three countries had in common was that they had absolutely nothing to do with Al-Qaeda. And so, there have been so many conspiracy theories that have been pushed from the top that now I think we are in a place where people just don't believe anything. And so on all sides, they're more quick to jump onto conspiracies.
Essentially the easiest concept in the world to understand where you've been lied to repeatedly. And so you're very skeptical of what you're being told by the elite. Now, of course, Seth Dillon is going to hop into post-modernist mode and go, well, Not all conspiracies are true. Some conspiracies aren't true. That's the conservative in this conversation, allegedly. Let's hear how he stretches this out as long as possible while saying nothing.
One of the reasons I've been such a strong proponent of free speech is so that we actually have the freedom to push back on false narratives, things that we shouldn't believe, things that aren't true, things that aren't well-founded. We need the freedom to actually hash these things out and have a conversation, have a debate about them. I think debate is the best way to get to the truth.
I mean, that's a good point in theory, and he's talking to Dave Smith, someone who actively debates, and Seth Dillon never has a debate ever. So what he's saying is technically true, but he doesn't take his own advice.
You know, a lot of people are exploiting the distrust to engage in a sort of kind of radical conspiracism where...
Where what? Accusations about the woke right and Nazis and anti-Semitic people are gathering a plot to round people up. Or just have their voices heard, you know, through debate like you're saying.
You know, it's not really... Some conspiracies are more reasonable than others. Some are just attempts to try to find any dots that you can find that might possibly be connected in some way in order to vilify somebody that you don't like and reach some kind of predetermined conclusion. We're using a reasoning method that's kind of like the inverse of Occam's razor, where instead of like the simplest, most straightforward explanation is probably the best, we're going for, you know, whatever's the most convoluted and hardest to falsify and that casts your enemies in the worst possible light. That's what we're going with as the truth. I think that's a very cynical play. I think it's very dishonest. And so there is a sense in which the conspiratorial stuff, which has some legitimacy to it in some cases, has been overdone and exploited.
You see how Seth is engaging in the leftist tactic of talking about a topic? Dave Smith clearly lays out the material reality with examples of why we don't trust our government. Seth responds with a meta-conversation about how things can happen. This is a postmodernist tactic to obfuscate and bore the interlocutor to death. He's not saying anything we don't already know. He prioritizes vague possibilities to muddy the waters from the actual discussion to be had. Now, what I'm about to say has been covered pretty extensively on the live stream on this very channel. James Lindsay, Tommy Robinson, and JD Vance were all recently in Israel within a week of each other. For some reason, the Shabbat signal was cast into the sky to let people know it's time to go to Israel. You might be thinking to yourself, so what? That's just 3 people. So what if a few randos went there? Well, douchebag, a month and a half ago, 250 state legislators went to Israel. A group of 250 American state legislators traveled to Israel on a trip in September 2025. Through its consulate, paid for all expenses like airfare, lodging, and meals. The trip, called 50 States, One Israel, aimed to build relationships between state lawmakers and Israeli officials, and included meetings with figures like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Lawmakers who participated stated the trip was comparable to other international trade and relationship-building missions, and no taxpayer dollars from their home states were used for the trip. You see, the money didn't come from their home states, but in 2024, the US approved approximately $18 billion in military aid to Israel, which is the largest annual military assistance package in history. This figure is part of a larger total that includes other approved aid, such as the April 2024 package, which included $14.3 billion in military assistance and $9.2 billion for humanitarian aid in Gaza. We are funding both sides of this war, but I don't want to be conspiratorial. Oh, I'm giving my brain a tummy ache. Oh, what do I do? Am I gonna be a conspiracy theorist, or am I just reading what's fucking happening, Seth? But now that you have an idea of how his brain works, let's move on to Slick Fuentes, baby.
The one that makes it particularly ridiculous with this Nick Fuentes thing, and I agree with you too. By the way, you know, I've talked to all types of people. I've had conversations with communists on my show and socialists, and weirdly, like, that never seems to be an issue, which is just very strange in a way.
Well, doesn't that just beat off like a Democrat at a drag show for kids? Dave Smith's conversations with communists is alarming, even though we know of the deep-seated Marxist infiltration of our institutions. You see, people only seem to freak out if Dave Smith talks to someone that they consider to be a Nazi. Who's they? The people that call people Nazis. The left and the Make Israel Great Again crowd. It's really simple. There's 2 groups. People that call people racist, anti-Semitic, and Nazis, and people that mock them. A word is defined by its application. Racist, anti-Semitic, and Nazi are solely used to silence dissent, and in other Western countries, get people put in jail. Speaking of silencing people, Haven't they already tried silencing Nick Fuentes? What's the new strategy? Throw an apoplectic shit fit when the person talking to him doesn't say what they want him to say?
Anyway, but with Nick Fuentes, particularly in this moment, what's so funny to me about it is it's like, guys, we ran the experiment of trying to censor Nick Fuentes. When I say we, I don't mean me. I never believed in that, and I had him on my podcast, back in the day too. But this guy is huge. It's just undeniable. He is huge. So at this point, you're just saying, would you like to not have a conversation about this? Look, I think there are lots of bad ideas all over the place. I always err on the side of sitting down and having a conversation is better than putting people in silence, trying to squash people. And look, Nick Fuentes was one of the most censored people in the country, and he's bigger than ever right now. So clearly that didn't work. And now we're having conversations.
Yeah. I agree with Dave. Maybe you're surprised that we agree on so much, but I agree with Dave about Tucker having every right to talk to whoever he wants to. I also agree that when you censor people and you try to suppress their voices, in many cases, you only make them louder. Drag the bad ideas out into the sunlight, engage with them, confront them. And this is my criticism of the interview with Nick Fuentes, is that there wasn't confrontation. Nick has said terrible things. Nick has said things like,
so of course, like a nagging roller coaster nosed wife, Seth is going to complain about how this conversation should have went, instead of being a man, having the conversation you want to have with the people you want to have it with, instead of complaining about how another man didn't have the conversation how I wanted it to happen.
He wants to, when we get into power, all these atheists and these heretics and these perfidious Jews, they deserve the death penalty. They need to be executed.
Hi, Seth. Atheist here. I support Nick Fuentes. Because even if what you're saying is true, I would rather that happen than my fucking life in this country for the past 5 years.
He's glorified Hitler and said that he's really cool, really effing cool, actually.
Hi, I'm Seth Dillon, and I'm a conservative. And I don't like Nick Fuentes because he thought Hitler was really cool.
To gloss over all of that, to not challenge it and confront it. Tucker is so good. He was so good when he would have Democrats on, leftists, liberals that he disagreed with. He would mock them. He'd make them look foolish. He would ridicule and refute their ideas. And they stopped coming back because they were so embarrassed because he made them look so foolish. I'd like to see Tucker do that with bad ideas on the right. Why isn't he doing that? The only reasonable conclusion that you can draw for not challenging Nick in more substantive ways is that he doesn't disagree with him.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what splitting is. Well, since I can't find a reason for the thing I agree with, then it must be the thing that I disagree with. Well, since I'm too stupid to think of another reason or another motive, since I lack so much imagination as a human being because I'm probably on SSRIs, listen to how he talks. Since I have such a lack of imagination, if I can't think of something, then it must mean that Tucker agrees with Nick. That's the only other thing it could mean. Why, if I didn't know any better, I would say that Seth Dillon is trying to find any dots that you can find that might possibly be connected in some way in order to vilify somebody that you don't like and reach some kind of predetermined conclusion.
Try to find any dots that you can find that might possibly be connected in some way in order to vilify somebody that you don't like and reach some kind of predetermined conclusion.
Trying to find any dots that you can find that might possibly be connected in some way in order to vilify somebody that you don't like and reach some kind of predetermined conclusion. How else could you possibly assume malice in the absence of evidence?
Sorry, Nick is trying to become more mainstream.
Right.
He's moderating a little bit. He's trying to distinguish himself from people who are further right than he is. And Tucker's helping him with that. Why? You want to ask that question. If we're asking questions, just asking questions, I want to know why Tucker is trying to mainstream Nick Fuentes instead of saying, look, you have radical, terrible ideas that have no part in the conservative movement. You're collectivist in your ideology. You're racist. You're bigoted in terrible ways. You've said horrible, disgusting things. I don't want you in my movement. Why isn't that Tucker's posture towards someone like Nick Fuentes?
Can you imagine if one of your friends talked about you like that? You'd ask him where his balls went. Is this how a conservative sounds? But why didn't he feel like how I felt when he talked to him? Why didn't he do it my way? I don't know, because when he crosses his legs, he actually might crush his balls? Because he's not a whiny little pussy like you? You are not on the right if you're pissing and moaning about how another man wouldn't try to prey on people's emotions and morally grandstand about mustache man bad. Remember how the left used to keep beating you over the head with slavery bad? And also Mustache Man bad? Apparently, we have people on the right that want to do the same thing by repeatedly saying Mustache Man bad. Does it ever lead to a deeper intellectual discussion? Or is the purpose to insinuate you're anti-Semitic to shut down any and all conversation? Why, I just said on X today, if you criticize black people, you're racist. Jews, anti-Semitic. Trans, transphobic. Gay, homophobic. Woman, sexist. Foreigners, xenophobic. If you criticize white people, you're engaging in a legitimate academic discipline. And then I show how whiteness studies is a legitimate academic discipline. Never take these terms seriously. Now, let's kick it back to Davey Boy Smith.
Well, I think this is like ridiculous and kind of sloppy thinking at a certain point. Just to be clear again, there's no evidence that Tucker was trying to mainstream Nick Fuentes. What happened here is Nick Fuentes became mainstream. Like, that's just the reality. And anybody can look at this. Like, this is just looking at numbers. It's not like an opinion. He's about as big as anybody in this world right now. But to the bigger point here, I think look, when you say, oh, there's these people with conspiracy theories, they're not connecting dots. Again, yes, that's true. It's also prevalent everywhere. Every single day, Mark Levin gets on Twitter and tweets Tucker Carlson. That's what he calls him every single day. What is that other than a ridiculous conspiracy? There's never been a shred of evidence. Say whatever you will about Nick Fuentes. You know, I've known him over the years. I don't know him super well, but I do know him. And full disclosure, I got to admit, I kind of like him. I disagree with him on a lot of things, and he disagrees with me on a lot of things. One thing I cannot say about him, he is willing to debate. So when you sit here, Seth, and you're like, Tucker should have handled him like this, Tucker should have screamed bigot at him the whole time, why don't you give that a shot? I bet he'd do it. Give it a shot. See how that goes. See who can persuade more people. Well, I actually don't think that's a very effective way of dealing with anyone's ideas.
Now, this may come as a surprise to you, but Seth Dillon is going to completely ignore Dave Smith's criticism of not debating Nick Fuentes, gonna completely just push past it, and listen to the SSRI whimper he lets out at the beginning of his next sentence. It is absolutely pathetic.
All right, well, a couple of things there. First, well, All right, well, a couple of things there. First,
well, okay, let's hear Seth tell us about Nick Fuentes and how scary he is that is being mainstreamed.
All right, well, a couple of things there. First, Nick is becoming more mainstream, and the question is whether or not that's a good thing. You know, I would argue that it's a bad thing that Nick is becoming more mainstream, and that any roadblocks you can put in his path. I think gatekeeping is a good thing. I think it's what keeps movements healthy. It's you keep the rot out, you keep the bad ideas at bay. You know, and I think that Tucker has a moral responsibility to do that in the position that he's in. So I would disagree with you that, you know, it's just fine that Nick is becoming. You may like Nick Fuentes. I think his ideas are absolutely terrible. I don't want to see them adopted, and I certainly don't believe that he's being honest when he tries to moderate and present himself as more reasonable than he is. I think that's a ploy. I think it's a game that he's playing, and to act like that's a good thing, no, it's actually a really bad thing that we're letting him get away with that instead of challenging that. You have to actually hold his feet to the fire and say, these are the things that you've actually said. Do you stand by them or not? Tucker wasn't willing to do that, so I think that's very problematic.
You heard that right. The conservative thinks that Nick Fuentes is problematic. Very conservative language, don't you think?
To find something to be particularly problematic, I don't like how it feels inside when he's saying these things, so it's problematic.
Would you like to address what he's saying?
I want it just condemned wholesale.
Okay, wait, are you going to take on any of his strongest arguments? Are we going to get to any of those?
No, we should shut it down, but I'm not saying we should shut it down. I'm not in charge of anybody. I'm just expressing how I feel, like a conservative.
Okay, but again, so I'm not exactly clear, because before you said he should be having this conversation. Now you're saying he has an obligation to gatekeep and he shouldn't be having this conversation. I mean, look, the way I look at it
is
like this.
No, the gatekeeping is done with the conversation. The conversation is the gatekeeping. Right. The conversation is saying, okay, look, your ideas are bad.
But look, yeah, but but I think your ideas are bad. So you don't get to dictate how everybody else has conversations. Sorry, you don't have that authority over other people. So you don't get to do it.
Yeah,
but
I'm not claiming to have the authority to dictate.
Right, but so you can,
I'm not
exactly.
saying Tucker has no obligation to do anything that I want him to do. I'm saying I believe there's a way things should be. I'm saying it shouldn't be the case that Nick should be mainstreamed. If I was in Tucker's shoes, I would have held his feet to the fire. I'm asking the question, why didn't he? I would like to know why he didn't.
Dude, in what universe is this not leftist rhetoric and struggle session of just constantly moralizing and he said no words? Did you really believe that? Let's ask him if he really believes it over and over again until we get the correct answer out of him, the good answer. He's giving us the bad answers right now. I'm going to keep asking the same question until I get the good answer. Are you going to talk to him? No, I'm just going to constantly deconstruct another person's conversation with him. And then moralize and kvetch like a candy cane schnozzed femme the entire time.
I think that I think that we all have a moral obligation to push back on bad ideas. Now, you think my ideas are bad, so yeah, you're going to want to challenge them. Well, I think that it would have been a responsible thing and a good thing for the conservative movement if someone as prominent as Tucker, with as large of audiences he has, if he was standing in the way of Nick Fuentes becoming more mainstream. I think that would be a good thing for everybody. And I'm disappointed that it didn't come. Let me just. But he's free to do whatever he wants to do.
Okay,
I'm free to criticize him for not handling the interview the way that I think it should have been responsibly handled. I think it was extremely irresponsible.
Okay. Certainly you're free to criticize them. You know, I would say that for all the people, by the way, who are so upset that Candace and Nick Fuentes have become so huge, like honestly, dude, talking to guys like you have no one but yourself to blame for that.
Isn't it so reminiscent of the conversations we've had with the left for 2,500 years now? You people can't steelman arguments. You can only stalemate arguments. The conversation never goes any deeper with the Semitic right or with the left as a whole, which is telling. People like Seth create people like Fuentes and me and many people on the dissident right. His heart pumps Kool-Aid. He ain't got the minerals, mate. He's abundantly light in the loafers. I've seen more spine in jellyfish. I've seen more guts in 11-year-old kids. Your pathetic nature as a demoralized man has kicked the door open for a wave of speech that is viscerally fearless. Sorry if white people don't care about protecting this demographic, when this demographic has had a hand in inciting hatred, culture, and laws against white people. They had their chance to speak up on behalf of white people, and they didn't. We slammed the door so hard in their faces, it might have broken some of their beaks. Now let's listen to Seth cry about how Dave Smith doesn't speak out against any of Nick Fuentes' bad ideas.
Yeah, well, you also like Nick Fuentes and don't have anything to say about his bad ideas. So it's just weird to get like a moral superiority coming.
I got a lot to say about his bad ideas. What are you talking about, man? Look, I believe what I believe. Obviously, if anyone's ever listened to me, do I say the same stuff he does? No, we have different views.
Well, why do you like him? Why do you like him? Why do you defend Nick Fuentes? Why do you like him if you hate his ideas so much?
I don't know. I mean, like, I hate a lot of Pierce's ideas and I like him. Pierce was for gun control. He's a dirty Brit coming over to my country trying to round up the guns. I'd still love to grab a beer with him.
Yeah, but he's never called for the execution of atheists, heretics, and perfidious Jews. He doesn't say that they should, burn in ovens and glorify Hitler. I mean, he hasn't gone that far, has he? I don't think Piers has said anything like that. I don't know why you'd want to be friends with somebody who has those kinds of views.
I have not gone that far, no.
I want to know what Dave thinks about Tucker essentially calling Charlie Kirk a heretic by saying that anybody who's a Christian Zionist is a heretic. I mean, that was Charlie Kirk, was it not?
Okay, but I mean, I think obviously he's speaking about evangelical Christians in general and saying that this violates the Bible, like to make it about Charlie Kirk.
And that's a circle that Charlie Kirk fits inside. It applies to him.
Okay, but so he's criticizing a view that Charlie Kirk had. Yeah, I disagreed with Charlie on that too. So what's your point?
He said he hates those people more than he said he hates those people more than anybody else and called them heretics. And yet he spoke at Charlie Kirk's memorial so glowingly. How do you reconcile those two things?
Yeah, he obviously didn't hate Charlie Kirk. There you go. Come on. This is like ridiculous. Yes, he's making a point that he thinks that actually the Christians who put Israel above their own government and believe that like only Jesus can come back if the Jews control the area, that is goofy, and I agree.
Yeah, well, if you say you hate people that have Charlie's views, then you're saying you hate Charlie.
Yeah, okay.
I don't.
Good. If that's the argument you want to go with, okay. I don't know what that means.
Okay. I love how Tucker spoke at Charlie's funeral, and Seth still needs to hear that Tucker hated Charlie. So let's end it here. He just keeps asking why Tucker would do something. Let's apply this to Seth. Hey Seth, why are you so focused on the right when you know how dangerous the left is? You know how Marxists have infiltrated our most powerful institutions? Who has more power, Seth? The communists in our government or Nick Fuentes? Why is it, Seth, that as soon as the right gains a shred of power, you start trying to create a wedge on the right? Do you really think Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes are a bigger threat than the left that just danced on Charlie Kirk's grave? Remember how the left hijacked national political conversations to focus on the safety of minority populations, just to call the right hateful, Seth? I mean, he's functionally a leftist. There's no depth to what he's saying. He just wants to morally grandstand and bring every conversation to the safety of an aggrieved minority. What if, Seth, we care about the majority now? What if we only want to talk about how we must secure the existence of our people and a future for our majority children? Your pathetically half-hearted attempts to replace an argument with ovulating has been well studied for the past few years and has become such an unpopular approach that Nick Fuentes is now having a generational run. The mocking will continue until morale improves. Have a good one.